Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 8 of Master of Pose. Can you believe we're on week 8 already? We're almost done. It's the last class. I am so excited, but I'm also kind of sad. It's been great seeing you guys every week, but I really hope you liked our last lesson. Today is going to be a bit of a challenging one. I did save the best for last. This is one of those things that I would say is one of the hardest things to get your handle on, and it is expressing your emotions and the art of emotions, and how you can do all different things modeling, surprisingly. It's not just an acting thing. It can also be modeling as well. So for those of you that may be just joining me this week, I will introduce myself. My name is Paige Wells. I am a model. I have been a model for almost a decade now. I have worked in small boutique agencies as well as large international agencies, as well as a freelance model. I have experience on runway, commercial sets, high fashion sets, you name it, I've probably been there. Stock photography, laughing at fruit, I have done that. So I am teaching you all of those 10 years of knowledge in this master course so that you can learn it in just a short 8 weeks. And then you don't have to spend a decade getting where I am now. You'll get a good running head start. But yeah, as I was saying, I am so excited. This is the last week, and it is a very, very important lesson. Although it is kind of a hard thing to learn, it should be very useful for you, and it's going to take a lot of practice, a lot of digging deep inside of your heart and your soul, which I will get into. But yeah, it should be pretty good. So the first thing I want to talk about is why emotion is important. So you think modeling, a lot of times you're like, oh, you're just getting photos taken of you, like, oh, you're just doing like a high fashion sort of thing, like, what do I need emotions for? And it all comes back to really what modeling is. So modeling, as much as it is a fun thing, at the end of the day, it's not about you. You are a person working on a team trying to create something. The photo may be being taken of you, but the photos aren't of you, right? So like most of the time when you are modeling, you are trying to advertise a product, whether that be a t-shirt or a winery or whatever it is that you are trying to sell. And when you're trying to sell something, you're usually trying to give a certain mood, a certain look, a certain feel, right? Like say if I was advertising like a coffee company, I want to show that I'm happy and I'm having fun drinking my coffee with my friends. I wouldn't want to be fiercely staring into the camera, giving it the best, like blue steel kind of face, right? You're trying to match the vibe of what you're trying to give off to sell said product. Even high fashion, if you're not trying to sell a product, or maybe you are trying to sell a high fashion brand, if you're doing an editorial, there's usually some sort of theme, some sort of emotion going on. You're trying to emit something different, whether it's angry or happy or sad or whatever it is. You have to be able to convey that emotion to make people, when they're looking at the photo, they've opened up the magazine, this is your opportunity to sell whatever cologne or whatever it is. You need to make a connection with the audience, whoever it is that is looking at your image. And doing so effectively, you need to be able to convey certain emotions and certain like ideals. So one of the big things, a big pitfall of models when they're first starting, is only having one face. So when you only have one face, you've pretty much got that one job handled, and the rest of it is sort of up to, like you can't do it, right? So like if you are wanting to be successful and you can only do fierce stuff, you're going to really limit your market. It's not that you can't be successful only having one face. There are models that you will see out there that really only have one look. Kendall Jenner. And great walk. She could work on having a few different expressions. But it just gives you much more wide variety of what you're able to do. And as you're able to book more jobs, you can make more money. You can make this more of a career rather than just a hobby. As well as even if you're just doing something creative, something artistic, you want to be able to emit that emotion, right? So like if you're doing, say like a really camp look, a really camp editorial, say you're like in a diner and you've got like this fun pinup clothing on and it's quite silly. If you are being very fierce while you're doing it, it's not really creating the artist's goal, right? Which is usually either the creative director or the photographer. So you have to try and do things as the emotion that you're trying to emit. So, and doing that on command can be very difficult unless you know what you're doing and that you're very well practiced. Which is one of the things that I have to say is one of the worst things that can make you look not so great when you're modeling is when you look like just kind of terrified when you don't need to be. Consent is great and looking like you want to be there and not like you're held captive and they're using you to photograph shirts in is very important. So along that lines of just like, consent is you want to look like you're trying to do what you're trying to do. You want to look like you're into it. You want to look like you're doing the job. Nobody wants to look at whatever you do, whether you're an actor, a model, a dancer. You don't want to see that performer looking terrified and looking like they don't want to be there. It's just going to make you feel uncomfortable in the audience. Which is moving on to my next point, which is the importance of mood boards and being prepared. So one of those things, as you are trying to emit a certain vibe, a certain emotion, as you are trying to do, part of knowing what you're trying to do is preparing in advance. So going back to a few classes ago, and I was lecturing you all about how you need to make a mood board, how you need to ask for a mood board. That is one of the best ways to keep yourself prepared to know what you're going into. So either they provide you with a mood board or you ask sort of the questions and you make one yourself. You can kind of figure out exactly what kind of vibe you're going for. If they send you a mood board that is very dystopian, lots of green lighting, lots of like really stern looks, you want to be able to practice being that kind of stern, fierce self before you get there, right? So as you're planning your poses, just like you should do for any shoot and planning what you want to do in advance, part of that is also planning the sort of emotion you want to emit. That can be seen both through your face and through your body. We are focusing more on the face right now in this class. We have gone over quite a few different bodies sort of posing for quite a few number of classes now. So as you are doing those is bringing those two concepts together. So especially when you're doing your final pose off, which we do next week, make sure that when you are doing things like saying when we were discussing those high fashion poses where you're doing crazy stuff and you're having fun, if you're like giving like me a big and you don't have a face to go along with it and you're just like, this is not really a vibe, but being able to be like, is more vibe. You hear my exhale there. That's another tip that you can use is try and breathe out. But yes, so you want to make sure to tie in your face and your body and create a mood board of everything that goes together. And part of, say you ask for a mood board, they don't give you a mood board. Or say they give you a mood board, but it's kind of vague. And I would recommend doing this always, but especially if you're not given a very good mood board, you're not giving a great direction in advance, look at their Instagram, see what kind of photos they have there, screenshot some of the photos there that are doing well or that people enjoy or that really stand out to you or that you think is a good match for what their vibe is. So like if you look at their profile and everything is light and happy and smiley, that gives you a bit of an idea that when you're at this shoot is you probably want to go light, happy, and smiling because you want to stay on brand. That being said, don't make too many assumptions. Always ask when you're on the shoot what you want. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Asking the right questions will always make you look more professional than just doing whatever you want and not really hitting what you're supposed to be doing. So making sure to ask the right questions, as I always tell you, make sure to find your key light. Make sure to ask what kind of vibe they're going for. Ask, how much of you is in frame, all those sorts of things will only make you look more professional. So don't be afraid to ask. But part of being prepared for these sorts of jobs is doing your research. So not only do you want to look at their Instagram, do they have a website? Do they have some sort of brand portfolio somewhere? Do they have a YouTube channel? Do they have whatever it is? Start Googling. You get hired to shoot for, I don't know, Chanel. You want to look up their website, you want to look up their Instagram, you want to look up their everything so that you can kind of get a good idea. Take screenshots, take notes so that you can walk into this shoot fully prepared for what you need to do. As well as the photographer. You don't always know who the photographer will be. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. If you do, it's always great to look at their page as well. Usually photographers are hired to a brand because the brand likes what the photographer does. Because when a photographer is getting hired, they'll send in their work and then they go, oh wow, I love this photographer's work. Let's go with that. So looking at their work, their Instagram, their website, as well as the brand's Instagram website, all that kind of stuff can be super helpful because then you kind of know what you're getting yourself into and you can prepare properly so that you know, do I need to scream when I show up on set? Do I need to laugh when I need to show up on set? Do I need to know what to do, right? And that being said, along the same lines, practice, 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 especially if it's something that you haven't done before. If you have never done a high fashion thing where it's going to be really dramatic, really super expressive faces, you should practice those in advance. That way, when you do arrive on set, you can just break them out. And then they're going to be like, oh my God, this person is so talented. Can you believe what they are doing? And you do that by practicing. It's like anything. You don't become a master violin player by never playing the violin, right? So before you have a shoot, create your mood board and practice, 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 and practice your faces and know exactly what you're planning to do. And never be afraid to ask questions when you arrive on set. So make sure you prepare in advance, and then when you get there, still ask those good questions. Which moves us on to our next little bit about emotions, is acting. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking, Paige, this is a modeling class, not an acting class. Well, let me tell you, if you want to be a professional model, I would definitely do a little acting. You don't have to do acting if you don't enjoy acting, but for one, it makes very good money. Two, things like commercials and even being a background actor on set is great for networking, great for rubbing elbows with the right people, getting to know people, you know, is how you kind of do these sorts of things. So many jobs that I will get were never listed, never big castings. They asked for me specifically. And the reason a lot of times they do that is they've met me on set, or they met me at a networking event, or they followed my Instagram. So as much as it seems a little strange, acting is one of the best ways to make a bit of money as well. If you're willing to do, say, TV commercials, the buyouts on those can be incredible. Because when you do a commercial, what you do is they will buy your face with the whatever type of product it is for a little while for what's called a buyout. So say if you do a diabetes medication commercial, you can't do any diabetes commercials for a 5-year contract, 1-year contract, whatever it is, right? And because of that limiting factor, those buyouts can be some sweet, sweet cash. I've definitely seen buyouts for a global buyout for a year worth like $15,000, and they fly you out to Mexico to film a diabetes commercial. I know it's not the most glamorous thing in the world to film a diabetes commercial, but at the end of the day, you get a trip to Mexico, you get 15 grand, why wouldn't you want that, right? And the more you are proficient with acting, the more you can actually utilize that in your modeling. Because as much as modeling, a lot of people think of it as just a pretty face, you are really the salesman there, and you really need to admit whatever kind of emotion that you're trying to give off. And taking acting lessons can be one of the best ways to do that, because there's so many little things of how you will externalize an internal emotion that will make things come off so much better on camera. And one of the best ways to learn that sorts of things is acting classes, believe it or not. Of course, my modeling class will teach you plenty, but I do highly recommend, as you sort of go about your career, is you top up on different things like that. I know myself, I'm never not a student. I will always forever be a student, even if I teach myself. I always want to learn, I always want to improve my skills and all those sorts of things. Not to mention just It's so much fun to be on set. I highly recommend being a background actor if you're not interested in doing speaking roles or anything like that. Just do background. You can make a couple $100. You usually make around $300 for one day's worth of work. And all you really do is you sit around and you eat food, and then every once in a while you walk in front of the camera as a background. And it's great. It's a great way to supplement your income as a model, because there's, especially if you're living in the Vancouver area, which I know a lot of you are, or the Victoria area, there's always so much going on. If you live in like a hub like that, it's a great way to supplement your income. It's fun, you get to be on camera, and you get to rub elbows with the right people, which is always great, because so much of this career is, for one, being extremely professional and showing up and doing things like being able to show these different emotions that most people aren't able to do. That will make you stand out, as well as networking and rubbing elbows with the right people. Those are one of the two most important things of making it big in this career, because anybody can be a pretty face. Not everybody can be a successful model. There's a lot more to it than just that. Which kind of brings me up to, so the next section is going to be all my little videos. I've put together a list of 8 different facial expressions. This is not a completely exhaustive list of every facial expression and emotion that you can give. There is hundreds of emotions that you could give, but I think having these basic ones is basically what you will need to be successful. These are the main ones, and then maybe further on in your career, you might mix it up a little bit. But these are the ones that I would consider to be super essential. And you'll be able to see my face go from sort of neutral to bringing apart these emotions, and you'll see how different it makes you feel. Which brings me to my first one, which is being fierce. I'm sure you felt the intensity change as soon as you brought on the fierceness. This is like kind of the jokey blue steel kind of thing. This is the smize. This is the high fashion. This is the, yeah, I'm the best type of face. It's actually one of what I would say the most basic, and I would say that most models can do this fine. I imagine all of you probably already know how to do this one. This is the one that I think I lecture about a lot. It's the one that is a go-to for most situations. And what you do, this is one thing that people always are like, Paige, that's a ridiculous thing to ask, but I hope you have been practicing in the mirror like I told you to. There's a lot of tension in your lower eyelids when you're being fierce like that. So if I'm just doing the rest of the face and there's no intensity in my eyes, it doesn't feel very fierce. But if you do the rest of your face and then bring it into your eyes, it is so much more. It feels powerful. You can see that I do squint a little bit up at the top, but for the most part, it's my lower eyes that bring that intensity. And being able to raise that little bit there makes a massive difference. So this is the emotion I would try and use probably if I was like at a really high fashion set. If it was something very, this is something I might do on a runway. If it was a very like high fashion runway, not all runways, of course, maybe like a commercial runway, you would be smiley and laughy. Don't think Victoria's Secret, think Balenciaga, you know. Did anybody else watch that show that just happened recently, by the way? Because it was amazing. Side note, I highly recommend making sure to consume that kind of content. Watch your runways, look at stuff, draw inspiration from there. Because you can look at, a perfect example was, I don't know if you watched that show, but Kim Kardashian. She looked terrified. And although her walk was good, she had a great walk, it was unique, she looked terrified the entire time. So it didn't come off very good. It looked, it didn't feel like she wanted to be there. It looked like she was holding her breath. It makes you feel a little bit of uncomfortable. So a lot of people have been sort of complaining about her walk for that reason. And her walk, if you actually go back and look at her body, she did a great job. But because she isn't properly emitting the emotion in her face that she should be, it looked terrible. So that's a perfect example of how you need models to look like they're into what they're doing. Otherwise, they just look like terrified, and then it makes everybody uncomfortable. That's not what you want to do. So that was a bit of a tangent, but I feel like it did perfectly illustrate my point. And let's move along to the second video, which is going to be screams. So this one, I hope you recognize the classic inspiration for that type of scream. Coco Roche. Nobody does the high fashion scream better than Coco Roche. Go watch some TikToks, go watch some YouTube videos, watch how she does this face, because she does it incredibly. It is one of my favorites because, for one, people are impressed when you break it out, because it requires a lot to make it look pretty, but also look intense. And when you can break that out, it's always a wowzer. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe that she's doing this. This is something that I would probably do in high fashion or editorial kind of stuff, either with just your face in it where you can really go for it and like give it your all, or say when we were doing those high passion poses, especially where I was jumping and doing all those sorts of things, that can be a great moment to go. So one of the big tricks I find to make this scream actually look good rather than just like, is if you look at my face right now, so I'm going to be as trying as square as possible. If I were to scream like I was terrified, my mouth is very circular. You see? Versus a scream that is like a passionate sort of angry scream, I'm going to snarl my lip a little bit. Snarling your lip is something that you do when you're more angry, more aggressive. So when you're screaming, you're going to want to, you see the difference between and there's nothing wrong with but it's a different look. You're going for like more of a surprise, scared type of scream versus a type of scream. A good way to kind of practice this, I don't recommend if you live in an apartment building to do this, but if you live alone in a house, actually scream. Feel like you're angry and you're screaming, and do it in the mirror and see what your face looks like. And just get that emotion out there and try and harness that emotion. I always like to think of me like ripping my hair out after like a really frustrating experience with somebody, which brings me to kind of how I do try and embody these emotions. Everybody's different in their acting style. Mine always kind of makes me laugh in the way that, I don't know if any of you guys have watched Barry on TV, but Gene Cousineau, the acting teacher, his main thing is always getting you to feel the emotion and then you can do it. Of course, Barry's a comedy and it's ridiculous, but it's not that wrong on that sort of thing. The methods in the TV show, of course, are a TV show, but feeling the emotion and trying to remember bringing yourself back to a point where you had said emotion can be one of the easiest ways to make these emotions really happen. So when I'm doing that, I feel like I'm screaming. I am ripping somebody's hair out or my own hair out or whatever it is. So the trick is to snarl. Snarling makes it angry. It's this little thing you do with your lips here that will make you look kind of mad. It can be kind of sexy too if you do it correctly, but if you're combining that snarl with a scream, you're going to look angry rather than scared, which is usually what you're trying to go for these sorts of things. Which brings me to my next one. Speaking of sexy, we're going to talk about being sultry. So, there is more than one way to be sexy. There are many, many ways to be sexy. This is what I would consider the most classic sort of way to do it if you were doing sort of a lingerie or a swimsuit sort of deal. There are sort of two main things with being sexy. You probably all know there's a TikTok trend that's like siren eyes versus doe eyes, right? Like some people, they'll go up and be really doughy, and then other people, they'll be like down like this. So this one is the more common one for when we're modeling and trying to be swimsuit, because we're also embodying powerfulness, whereas this is quite vulnerable, which we will get into later on in another video coming up this week in this episode. And so you can look down through your eyes, tilt your head back. You want this long neck here. The neck is really part of what makes it really sexy. Having this neck, looking down, and making sure to keep your mouth relaxed. So fierce is very similar to this, but just a lot more intense. So fierce, I would be straight to camera usually, or like over here. I'm thinking about pressing my forehead towards the lens. I'm feeling very strong, but sultry, I'm wanting the lens to come towards me is the difference. So I'm kind of leaning back, I'm looking down, you're keeping your mouth relaxed, and you have a little bit less intensity in your eyes. It's a little bit more, not droopy, but like your eyelids are kind of a little bit more closed. You have less intensity in your lower eyelid and your mouth is relaxed. One of the easiest ways to make sure that mouth stays relaxed is to blow air out your mouth. Which another tip I have as well, always remember to breathe. Don't forget to breathe, don't pass out, and you will look like you're not breathing. So make sure to blow air out your mouth and kind of look down like that. And it will give a very sexy vibe. Which brings me to my next one, which is happy and light. So this is the one that I talk about most often being used for commercials. So as much as fierce is probably one of the most important, this happy and light is one of the most important as well. Those two are your two main goes. So those are smiles that aren't too big. It's a slight smirk. It's a happy. It's a you want to be there. You love this product. You want to buy more rings, or you want to buy more flowers, or whatever it is. You want more of it. You want to buy it, right? But you're not overly the top. It's still pretty natural. It's still pretty subtle. You're giving more smirks and subtle smiles. So for this sorts of thing, I might say if I had some jewelry, I'd be looking down at my jewelry, giving it a subtle smirk. You just want to turn up the corners of your eyes. You want to have your eyebrows not too raised, because this is a problem. You never want to do this. This is terrified. But have a bit of a raise in your eyebrow is okay, but do not put them up too high. Give yourself a little smirk. And I would vary it a little bit, because these little smirks, if you hold them too long, they can be very hard to hold. So when you do so, kind of go. So looking down, being a little bit shy, giving a smile, not too big of a smile. You can give me one of these at most, but it's going to be pretty light. It's going to be pretty airy. This is what most commercial stuff is going to be like. And when you're selling most of your products, you're probably going to be doing this face for the most part. Which brings me to my next one, which is happy camp. So, for those of you that might have been very confused about the Met Gala theme a few years ago, camp does not actually reference camping. That's a little bit different. Camp is like the over-the-topness performing type deal. So like think of Broadway. Broadway can be quite camp. It's very over the top. It's very big. And sometimes you want to employ that sort of camp look. Say like what I was saying earlier, say you're in a diner with pinup clothes and things like that. If you're blue stealing it, it's not going to look right. You might want to do a big smile. So these are fun expressions. They're happy expressions, but they're massive. They're overdone. Imagine you're at a theater and you want that person in the back to be able to see what kind of face you're making, right? These are big faces. So you don't just smile and go, smile. It's whatever you do, make sure it's really big movements. You're not just smiling. You're smiling. You've got that big smile. You're not just surprised. You're, oh my God, I'm so surprised, which honestly can be so much fun. I love it when these are the vibe of the set that I'm trying to go on, and you will get those, and they are so much fun. So make sure that you practice those happy camp kind of looks, because they can be hard to pull off. Pulling off a good smile, as you guys know, we spent a whole week on just smiling, can be really hard. So pulling off these like fun, campy smiles can be a great thing to have in your repertoire. Because at the end of the day, people love happy, smiley people. Of course, people love people that look like they're having fun. So being able to have those sorts of things is such a good asset and does make you much more versatile. And being able to differentiate between having a small, subtle, little smirk of a smile and having a big camp of a smile. So if you notice, this is almost a little similar to the scream, but I'm not snarling my lip. I'm still bringing this big smiley cheeks forward and opening my mouth, but that just shows how different emotions you can have just by changing those subtle little things. You can go from terrified to angry to happy only by changing the way my upper lip sits on my face, which is insane, but it is so useful to be able to switch between those different things. So that's my next one, is make sure that you have mastered the camp. Not the campsite, but the camp. You're on Broadway. Which brings me to my next video, which is sadness. So, sadness is one that you're probably not going to use that often. You will use it every once in a while. Sadness is one that you tend to use in more editorials, that sort of stuff. You don't tend to do that when you're trying to sell a product, because for the most part, nobody wants to be sad after they bought their new hairbrush or whatever it is. You want to be happy about those things, so most of the time you're not going to do that. But if you're doing anything artistic, if you're doing editorial, if maybe what you're selling is kind of a sadder subject matter. Maybe it's for a nonprofit or something like that, and you do want to be able to look sad. That is maybe something that you should have in your repertoire, but I wouldn't say it is the most common thing that you would be doing. One of the things that I thought was very interesting is, I don't know if anybody else gets like this, but sometimes I like hyper focus on an interest. And recently mine was a behavioral analyst. I've watched endless videos of them talking with behavioral analysts. And one thing that I found very interesting was they were going over the Johnny Depp trial, and they were talking about how they were pretty sure that the emotion they were feeling was real because they were furrowing the uptick of their eyebrows in the center of their face. I didn't buy that for 2 seconds, because I knew both of those were trained actors, and I know that it's actually not that hard to do that. They were saying even actors don't put their eyebrows up like that. Yes, we do, and we all know how exactly to do it. And you should yourself learn how to do that. It's one of the quickest ways to make yourself look concerned, sad, any sort of emotion like that. If you see my eyebrows, they go up in the center and they're kind of furrowed a little bit together. As soon as you add this, no matter what I'm doing, I look like a little bit sad. Even if I'm smiling, I look sad, right? But if I smile, that exact same smile, where my eyebrows look good, it's a completely different feel. So as soon as you want to try and add any sadness or vulnerability, or maybe you're recalling a sad thing that happened, put your eyebrows up like this. This is another one that you have to look in the mirror. I would recommend just sitting in front of your mirror and practicing, because it is hard. Don't get me wrong. That behavioral analyst, yeah, I think for the average person, if you want to look for that, you usually know that they're being genuine. For someone like Johnny Depp, who is a esteemed actor, I know for a fact that he should be able to furrow his eyebrows like that to make it feel real. Not saying that his emotions weren't real, but just on that little note from that behavioral analyst, I thought that was very interesting. So that is how I would really recommend admitting sadness, because from there you can do anything. You can have your mouth sort of open, you can even smile and give a sad smile. You can do all sorts of stuff. The most important thing is those eyebrows, which kind of tied together is our next one, is vulnerability. Perfect. So this one is kind of along the same lines as being sad, is being vulnerable. Just because you're vulnerable doesn't mean you're sad, but a lot of those things are kind of the same way. There is, like I was saying earlier, that TikTok trend, the doe eye versus siren eyes. This is really playing into vulnerability and dominance there. The doe eye is more so emulating you want to be saved. You want Prince Charming to come get you, or Princess Charming, or whoever it is. You want them to come rescue you a little bit. You're probably looking up at somebody. You're making yourself look smaller. You're looking up. You're probably having your eyes very wide, and you're relaxing your mouth. You're going to look quite vulnerable. This is something that I would do depending on what you're trying to advertise. This one you might use a little bit more. More than sadness, less so than fierce, and like a subtle smile. Every once in a while you'll be doing up the doe eye. If you're trying to go for a sexier vibe that is a little bit submissive, then this is what you want to go for. You want to look up at your subject. You want to keep your eyes pretty open and keep your mouth mostly relaxed. And this is going to create a very vulnerable thing. You're also going to want to, this one is very important with how you hold your shoulders. So when you're feeling vulnerable or in defense in the animal world, and just that's the way our brain works, is you want to protect your organs. Humans are one of the only animals that have all of our vital organs just like on display like this. So when you're feeling vulnerable, and you might notice people do this in real life, is you're going to come across yourself. So even if you have the face, you want to roll your shoulders over and really bring it in. You want to make sure that you're kind of protecting yourself, and that will make yourself look more submissive and a little bit more vulnerable. And that can be, so like if I'm trying to advertise something where I need to be quite vulnerable, then you want to kind of come inwards towards yourself. You want to protect yourself. You want to look up at someone, and you want to keep that mouth quite relaxed. Which transitions to my last video, which is dominance. So, if you can do submissive, you can do dominant, because it's the exact same thing, it's just the opposite. Remember how I said to roll your shoulders in? Bring them out. Roll your shoulders back. Be as broad as you possibly can. You know how I said to look up? Look down. Look down at the person. They're beneath you. You're tilting your chin up and looking down through your eyelids. And you want to keep that face strong. You know how I was saying relax your eyes, relax your mouth? Give me your best fears and bring it up a notch. Bring yourself up, bring yourself powerful, bring yourself strong. This is something that I use all the time. It might just because I am like a non-binary / androgynous model. I've always been androgynous, even well before I came out as non-binary. They've always kind of put me in these like androgynous non-binary roles. It's like they figured it out before I did. So you just kind of hold yourself up. You hold yourself powerful. If I was modeling a new suit, I would maybe do something like this. If I was supposed to be a boss lady, I would do something like this. If I was trying to be really sexy, I would also do something like this, rather than go for the super vulnerable. That I find for the sexy just tends to be like my face shape and stuff. A lot of you guys do have these big, beautiful, doughy eyes, and you can look amazingly sexy being a little bit more vulnerable. It doesn't look as good on me, so I will admit this is a fault of my own. Dominance is where I go. So you want to be able to look down like they're a little speck on the floor and you are the queen. So you look down through your eyelids, you tiff your chin up, and you keep it tense, and you roll your shoulders back. So that is what I'm covering for today, as there is massive amounts of different emotions that you can do. This is sort of what I would consider to be the most essential. To recap that again, is fierce. Fierce is the classic blue steel kind of model look. That's the one where you want to think about pressing your forehead to the camera. You want to keep tension in your lower eyelids. Snatch that jawline, press the tongue to the roof of your mouth, blow a little bit of air out your lips. Fierce. Empowerment. There we go. The second one is a scream, an angry scream. Heavily inspired by the famous Coco Roche. You want to smile that lip. You want to squint your eyes as little as you can. You want to keep your eyes open as much as you can, but you also want to have that furrow in your brow. So snarl your lip, furrow your brow, go for the scream. My recommendation for learning this one is to actually just scream. Find a place where it's appropriate for you to scream, and just scream it out until you feel what you're supposed to feel. And then you can bring that back and encapsulate that, and you know what it's going to look like. Not to mention, how therapeutic is it to just like scream? You're going to love it. Trust me. This week's homework, you're going to be like, oh yes, it's the best. So I recommend doing that. The third one is sultry. Sultry is similar to fierce, but a little bit more relaxed, and making sure to emphasize your neck. Your neck is very important for looking sultry. We all know why. So make sure to keep that mouth and lip relaxed, and your eyes have intensity, and show off your neck and things like that. And that will help bring that to the forefront. The next one is happy and light, which is the main go-to for any commercial sort of situation for the most part. Not always. 99% of the time, you're probably doing happy and light. Subtle smiles, looking down, not too much direct to camera, looking sort of around the camera and giving little subtle smiles and keeping things bouncy and fun and positive. You don't want to bring too fierce. You don't want too much tension in your eyes. You don't want too much tension at all in general. You want to be light and happy and fun and relaxed. Which, along the same veins, happy camp. This one's fun. You don't get to use it as often as you say the fierce and the happy and the light are the main go-tos. Happy camp, I do say, of the more obscure ones, is something that I would do a little bit more often. And that's when you have those big animated smiles, you're laughing at fruit. If you've ever done stock photography, I used to do a lot of stock photography, and there was a lot of laughing at tap machines, laughing at jewelry, laughing at whatever it is that you're laughing at. This is a happy camp sort of situation. And that will be used in commercial, mostly stock photography and a few different things, editorials, say if it's like pinup editorial, something like that. And those are, think massive, think big expressions, big. Imagine you're trying to play it for the person at the very back of the theater. And then the next one is sadness. Sadness is pretty much all encapsulated in the eyebrow. You can do pretty much everything, whatever you want with your face and your eyes. But as long as you get that proper brow there, then it will look so much more sad. You can have a big campy smile and put in that brow and it looks like not the same anymore. So as soon as you add in that little brow, that will give you the sadness. A good way to try and emulate the sadness if you're having trouble with that brow, make yourself sad, but in a constructive way. Think about things that make you kind of sad, and then look in a mirror and look at what your face does, and you're going to notice that little eyebrow, and then the more that you practice it, the more that you'll be able to do it. And then the next one is vulnerability. It's kind of along the same side of sadness. A lot of times when you're sad, you are vulnerable. Bring yourself in, look down and up. You're bringing yourself into yourself, and you're covering all of your vital organs because you're vulnerable and you're worried a tiger is going to eat your liver, basically. Is the like old school psychology behind that. So you just want to look down and up, try and keep your mouth relaxed and bring yourself in. And then the other side of the coin for that one is dominance. You want to keep yourself as big as possible. You want to look down through your eyes. You want a lot of tension in your face. You want to be powerful, pretend that you're Marie Antoinette to just tell the poor people to eat cake. You know, you're looking down at them. You're really bringing that powerful emotion into it. And as you're able to master these emotions, utilize these emotions, you're going to be able to create such a huge difference in your modeling, because if you can do the perfect pose that you found on Pinterest that is just like the most fun, but your face is not along for the ride, it's not going to look good. It's just not going to look good. You're going to look uncomfortable. So especially as the final pose off is coming up, I'm so excited to see your videos. Make sure that you don't forget about your face. There's one of the biggest things with modeling is a lot of times you will be doing a pose and you'll forget to point your toes. You need to be aware of yourself from the tippy top of your head to the bottom of your toes. Always remember to point your toes. Always remember that your face is a focal point. They are taking photos of you. Do not forget about your face. And matching your face to what you're doing is so important. And as you guys practice, I am sure you are going to practice matching different emotions to different poses and seeing how it feels. Which brings me back to, does it look like I have a question or no questions? Okay, perfect. Since this is the very last week, if anybody has a question, please DM me, please email me. I will do my very, very best to answer you. Don't be shocked if I send you a voice memo because sometimes it's easier to explain things like that. But please, since the course is over, if you have any questions whatsoever, it can be about the industry, it can be about posing, it can be about whatever it was, just please ask and I'll be more than happy to answer, because this is the last week, which means it's time for your pose off. I am so excited for the pose off. So to go over what you're going to win, again, this is a skills-based competition. This is not a random draw. It is showing off what you have learned. You have taken this whole 8-week journey with me, and I want to see what you have learned. So show it to me in a 1-minute video. You can chop it up, edit it a little bit, and you can add music if you like. You do not have to add music. It might be a good idea to play music in the background while you're posing and then mute it if you don't want music in it, just so that then you get a rhythm going. But give me that 1-minute video. Don't put a bunch of effort into fancy editing, cool transitions, all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about it, because I'm not going to be judging based off that. I'm going to be judging based off your poses. So please try and give me a variety and show off what you have learned. If you have just absolutely mastered your smile now, show me your best smile. I want to see it. I want to be able to see you kind of do a little bit of fashion, a little bit of smiley, a little bit of commercial. Show me what you have learned and show me what you are now super confident in. Show off that flow. I really focus on your flow, guys. A flow is so important. So make sure you've got that good flow. Make sure you don't forget your face. Make sure you don't forget your feet and your hands. Lots of times we can ball up our hands in little fists when we're trying to do what we're trying to do and have really concentrated faces because we're trying to do that headstand pose that we saw. But you have to remember to do all of it from head to toe. A 1-minute video, please just show me the best of what you learned. I'm not going to give you a super succinct rubric because I want to see what you have learned. So it looks like I do have a question now. Any tips for makeup with COVID? That is a bit of a tricky one. I would probably say it sort of depends on how you're feeling, right? Like if you have I had big bags under my eyes and a really red nose from like blowing my nose and stuff like that. So I would probably make sure to put some concealer on around your nose, make sure it's not too red, as well as under your eyes. I will say, I'm not going to be looking as much on your makeup. So for one, feel better. I hope you feel better soon and you're not too sick. But two, don't worry too much about your makeup. Do your best. Just sort of do like regular makeup. I would just make sure to cancel out any redness from blowing out your nose would probably be my best tip, and cover up any eye bags if you have them. But I'm going to be more focused on your posing. And if you're not feeling well and you want to go kind of slow, remember you can do a little bit, edit it together, chop up the clips. That's totally fine. Just make sure it ends up being 1 minute, and you just... As much as I was saying no editing, it's not that I don't want you to be able to edit. I want you to be able to chop things up and do stuff like that. I'm just saying don't focus on editing because I'm not going to choose based off editing. But yeah, I hope you feel better soon. But to go into what you will win as well, because that's very exciting. So you will get a fully styled and mentored photo shoot by myself. Your advertisement will appear in the Roxy Theater programs this year. As your big ad, it'll have your face. You're going to become the face of the next Master of Pose. We have Chai Fashions from the Bay Center. They do have multiple locations, but we are working specifically with the Bay Center and the Bay Center Chai. They will be styling it, so you will get a fully styled look from... We'll do 3 looks. We'll do fully styled 3 looks. We'll be shooting in studio here. So not only will you get some very in-studio shots, which is incredible, you get to say that you have worked with a brand, which is amazing. And then you will be fully mentored the whole time, and you will get professional hair and makeup to just create that amazing ad. And you're going to get a real, proper tear sheet with industry professionals are going to see it. The Roxy Theater is a historic theater in town, and I'm so excited to be able to put our advertisements in there because it's one of those theaters that industry people love. It is historic. You're going to get that face in front of casting people. You're going to get that face in front of other actors. You're going to get that publicity. Not to mention you get to be the face of Master of Pose. How incredible is that? Is that not just amazing? I am so excited. So if you want to win all that, give me your best pose off. It will be due. You have 1 week to do that. So they are due next Saturday at noon, pretty much the same time as we'd be doing this live stream here. So exactly a week from right now, because it is Saturday at noon. Next Saturday at noon, please send them in. You can send them in beforehand, send them in as soon as you're done, but they are due then. If you do have some sort of extenuating circumstances, say your grandma dies or something, please email me, please communicate, please let me know what happens. Then I can potentially make accommodations, but I'm assuming for the most part, everybody's grandmothers are not dying. So hopefully, at least, if not, rest in peace, grandma. But try and get them in by noon on Saturday, and then I will announce the winners, assuming I haven't had to make any accommodations for anybody, on the 18th. And just be aware, I will be a proud mama bear that will show off this video if you're comfortable with it. So if you are not comfortable with me showing off, say on social media or whatever, the final pose off, that's totally fine. If you win, just let me know in a little note. Or actually, in general, just let me know if you don't want it up here on social media or anything like that. That is totally 100% okay, and I am down for your comfort level. But that being said, I am so excited to see your pose off videos. So if I do end up getting really sappy and emotional and making a compilation of everybody's little pose offs that I'm really proud of, don't be shocked. But just let me know if you don't want to have that out there. But yeah, since this is the very, very last class, I do want to take a moment in case there's any questions or anything like that. No questions? Okay, perfect. If you do think of any, especially as you're doing your little videos, your 1-minute videos for the pose off, if you are doing it and you go, oh wow, like that's something that I didn't think of before, DM me. I will get back to you. Email me, DM me. You know how to reach me. Like impossible. And I am so excited, and I just want to thank you all so much for being on this journey with me. I have enjoyed it immensely, and I hope that you've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot from all of you, and answering your questions and developing this program has really honed everything in for me. And I'm gonna get really emotional, and I'm gonna try not to get emotional. People that know me well know that I'm a big sap. But I just want to thank you all so much for taking my course. It means so much to me, and thank you so much. And I can't wait for next session, where one of you will be the face of next session's Master of Pose, and I am so excited for it, and I love you all so much. And now I'm just rambling about how appreciative I am, but I really do appreciate you all so much, and I really hope that you've learned a lot. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. You all are my little mentor-y babies now, so just throughout life, if you ever have something that you're unsure of, reach out to me. You know how to reach me. I'm not scary, I promise. I'm just a normal person, and I love to hear from you all. So I want to say thank you, and that's pretty much it. Shall we say that's the final wrap? And thank you all so much for coming. Bye.